and gentlemen, viewers and listeners. Thank you once again for joining us on our show, Let's Talk About It. I am your host, Ravey Gonzalez, with my co-host, Jaime Burns Jr. For the show, we are live on Channel 10, Nortevisión, Channel 17, CCV, Channel 61, CBC, and we're live on SCRS 103.1. Tonight, we will be discussing important issues. We'll be discussing issues that have been asked of us to discuss. But before we proceed, I think it's in order for me to publicly congratulate my co-host, Jaime Burns Jr., on being called to the bar. He is officially a member of the law fraternity. We know that he is a proud citizen of Orange Walk. We know that he has undertaken a tremendous task. A lot of responsibility falls on his shoulder as an attorney at law. And I would like to extend my personal congratulations to him. Jaime?
Thank you, Rave, and good night to you all. I would just like to state, if I may, that at the calling ceremony last week, which was almost a surreal experience, the Chief Justice actually echoed some of your very words tonight, and I hope that I can carry out the duties and responsibilities that are expected of me by the legal fraternity with the due diligence. And I would also like to take this forum here to thank some people that I have already thanked personally, but I believe that for what they did for me in the many years of study that it took to reach this point, they deserve some public recognition as well. My mom, Evelyn Burns, my father, Jaime Burns Sr., they were the most instrumental, along with my sister, Francine Burns. They were, and my two brothers as well, Justin and Julius. They were the bedrock of my journey. I simply could not do it without them. And a host of friends who became family. I'm sure many of you have those. And keep them there, because when they need be, they will be present for you as they were for me. I can testify to that. I have friends who are the very caliber of loyalty and family, and to them my heart goes out. And I just want to say to all of them, thank you again, and thank you, Rave.
Well, congratulations, Jaime, attorney at law. I'm sure that your family and friends are proud, and I'm sure you will do Orange Walk proud. So, Jaime, you know, election is next week, Wednesday.
Imminent.
A lot of people are excited. Some are not so excited. As we encounter people out there, especially the young persons, and one of the questions that keep coming up is this: how will my singular vote change, or how does my singular vote affect government? You know, the several persons have asked us that. They have asked us, what does first past the post mean? You know, so they want to understand how their vote impacts, how their vote changes the future, how their vote creates a better Belize. And so in order for us to be able to explain to those persons and to anybody who wants to know the weight of their vote, it is important that we understand how we are governed. If we understand the system that is in place, then we can understand how is it that one vote, two votes, three votes, a number of votes, and then a number of seats in parliament creates a government that then becomes the government that rules for a limit of 5 years or less. So, but for us to understand that, we always need to do a bit of history, and we try to simplify history. Not that we want to do it any injustice, but because of time constraints, we want to do it in a fashion that is as succinct as possible, as fair as possible, and in a nutshell explain the principles, the concepts that have made our government what it is today, and we understand how we are governed today. So perhaps we can start with a bit of history, how we are governed, before we proceed to first past the post system. Amen?
Well, Rave, as you rightfully said, in order to understand how one can influence a system, it's best to understand the system itself. So the system of governance that's in place in Belize is called the Westminster system. And the Westminster system is a democratic parliamentary system of government that is modeled after that which was developed in the United Kingdom. The very term Westminster comes from the Palace of Westminster in the UK, which is the seat of the British Parliament. This system consists of a series of procedures for operating a legislature, and it is used in most of the Commonwealth countries around the world. And some of the characteristics of the Westminster system include having an official head of state, which many might but should not seek to misconstrue as being the head of government. The head of government is the prime minister, or in some cases the premier. The head of state is and always has been the governor general. The head of state is the Queen's representation in the country. However, most of his functions really are ceremonial, and the head of government is in charge of the legislature, or is the head of the legislature and the bodies of government that encompass the elected officials from the 31 constituencies we have in Belize.
Okay, so we have, or our system of governance is derived from England.
Yes.
We have duplicated their model, and that is what we have in Belize. So we have the head of state, which is
the Governor
Queen,
General, the Queen.
the Queen, who is represented by the Governor General,
Yes.
who acts in a more ceremonious fashion, meaning
Yes,
that the acts of this Governor General is basically to give his blessings on certain activities that the Constitution requires him to do.
Yes, he's the holder of constitutional power. That's another one of his characteristics. And he also holds some reserve powers, but mostly, like you said, his functions are ceremonial.
Okay. And then we have the head of government, which is the person, or the party leader as they call him, who governs, or the party leader in itself connotes the person who has a majority support within a party. So for the voter to understand, do we vote in our system directly for a prime minister?
No, we don't vote directly for a prime minister. We don't. We vote for area representative, duly elected area representatives for every constituency. And the representatives who are elected would belong to one party or the other. Or no, we have three parties present in Belize, so they would belong to one of the parties, and the prime minister would be the party leader of the party who has the most elected representatives getting into government after an election. So we know that Belize has 31 constituencies, which means we have 31 seats in the House of Representatives. The majority of 31, the simple majority, is 16. So whichever party attains 16 seats effectively retains control of the government, or is in administration rather.
Okay.
And the party leader from the party who attains those 16 or more seats is then appointed prime minister by the head of state, the governor general.
So in order to form government, you mentioned that Belize has 31 electoral seats.
Yes.
Of course, 31 can't be divided in half, or 15 and a half, 15 and a half. There needs to be one seat that will go for a particular party when you have two parties involved in a electoral process. Like we rightly said, there might be three, so we don't know what would be the dynamics if third parties get certain members elected. We might end up with a hung government, we might end up with a coalition, but that's something we will discuss further. So in order to form a government, the leader of the party has to attain 16 seats minimum.
No, the party has to attain 16 seats. The leader to become prime minister would have to belong to that party.
Okay. So was it always 31 seats? How is it that we have 31 seats? How is it set out? People want to know, because remember, people vote from different areas: Corozal, Orange Walk, Belize City, Cayo, Stann and Toledo, and they want to know, well, how is it that my vote in Corozal impacts government in Belmopan? How is it that my vote in Stann impacts? Because we already established that our process doesn't allow for direct voting of our prime minister. That's not how the way the process works. So how is it that one vote in Corozal, perhaps, and one vote in Toledo would help make up a government? So we will discuss that when we come back in our second segment. Stay with us as we talk about governance and the impact of a vote for the upcoming elections next week. Stay tuned.
Francis, where's the money? You put we in a super bond. Musa, where's the money? You think we forget Intel call? Hey, we watch you, oh we. You take Belizean people clung. Where's that offshore money? The PUP party you're gone. Like blah blah blah. Can't forget what you do to we when we turn our back. DFC 23 million gone away like that. Universal health 33 million on the spot. Don't think that we forgot. You call the shots.
But I want to ask, where are those millionaires? Those people that get millions of dollars over the 7 years when we were in government? Who people on here, but I don't follow this.
Francis, where's the Musa? Where's the Francis? Where's the Musa? Where's the Musa? Where's the money?
Education is of utmost priority to the UDP government. We have made tremendous gains, but much more is to come. We will focus on early childhood development and education, implement a nutrition in schools program, build 35 new schools from preschool to high school, eliminate fees for those in need at high schools, broaden access to education through online classes, adult continuing education, and evening school, strengthen teacher education programs, expand the use of technology in schools for students and teachers, diversify high school curriculum to prepare students for employment, expand the apprenticeship program to increase youth employment. A UDP government will continue to invest in our people. On November 4th, vote UDP. The best is yet to come.
And welcome back to Let's Talk About It, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. We were discussing tonight the impact of votes, or singular votes, or one vote, two votes, three votes for the upcoming general election next week, Wednesday. Before we got into that part, we were talking about the type of parliamentary democracy that we have. We've established that it was something that we duplicated, we copied, or perhaps inherited from England, in which we have a head of state, which is the Queen, represented by the Governor General. We have the head of government, which currently is the Honorable Prime Minister Dean Barrow. And then we have, in all, we have 31 seats that are what makes up the different divisions where people can vote for. And whoever gets 16 seats then makes up the government. But it was not always like this. When Belize received its independence, we went from 18 to 28 seats. And then the term for governance went from 3 years to 5 years. And so from 1981 till now, there have been 2 amendments to increase the number of electoral seats in Belize. Just to be sure, in 1993, they went from 28 to 29 seats, so 1 more was added. In 2005, 2 more seats were added, so it went from 29 to 31, which is what we have today. So there has been no more increases in the number of electoral seats. So it leaves us, if we are to do our math, that 16 is the magic number. The party that gets 16 seats is the party that then forms government. And it's even provided for in our Constitution, which is our highest law of the land of Belize, which states at section 89, for us to be sure, it says, for the purpose of the election of members of the House of Representatives, Belize shall be divided into 31 electoral divisions, the names and boundaries of which are set out in Schedule 1 of the Representation of the People Act. So that is how we are governed, or the system is set up right now. 31 seats in different parts of Belize. So I'll ask my friend and co-host Jaime to go over it for us to know where those seats are located.
Yes, as mentioned, we have 31 seats or 31 constituencies, but you might be surprised to know that it's not as, the knowledge is not as commonplace as you would hope, that everyone knows each and every one of these 31 constituencies. I myself, from time to time, have to list them off in my head to count them all. So what I would like to do here is list them all for you to know. And we'll start for geographical and comprehensive ease from north to south. So Corozal has 4 constituencies, that's 4 seats. We have Corozal North, we have Corozal Southeast, we have Corozal Southwest, and we also have Corozal Bay. On to Orange Walk. Orange Walk also has 4 seats, or 4 constituencies. We have Orange Walk North, we have Orange Walk Central, we have Orange Walk East, and we have Orange Walk South. Now on to Belize City. Belize City has 13 constituencies, the most of any district in the country. We have Queen Square, we have Mesopotamia, we have Port Loyola, we have Collet, we have Belize Rural Central, we have Belize Rural South, we have Caribbean Shores, we have Freetown, we have Albert, we have Lake I or Lake Independence, we have Belize Rural North, we have Fort George, and we have Big Stock. Cayo is the second biggest district in terms of seats or constituencies. They have 6. We have Cayo West, we have Belmopan, we have Cayo North, we have Cayo South, we have Cayo Northeast, and we also have Cayo Central. Now Stan Creek and Toledo between themselves have 4 constituencies. Stan Creek has Dangriga and Stan Creek West, and Toledo has Toledo West and Toledo East. So all those constituencies comprise the 31. So whichever party on election day would win the majority of these by way of winning 16 or more would form our new government.
So we discussed the 31 seats, we discussed the 16, but how does one of our youth, then, or a young person that says, man, my vote inconsequential, my vote no make a difference, that kind of attitude, how do we explain to him that in his finger he may hold who is in government?
Well, many people like to address that concern, or rather that attitude of lackadaisicness, of being lackadaisical rather, sorry. They would address it by saying that you never know whether a representative could have been elected by your one vote. That meaning that he would have lost his election by one. However, the picture is much broader. It's more encompassing than that because you have to think about the government you're voting for and not just the area rep. The area representative is much more so crucial to your direct concerns and interests in your immediate community. But as a citizen of the country itself and not just a citizen of your community, you must bear in mind the responsibility that comes along with voting when considering that your vote may also elect one government or the other because because for all you know, your vote may not only be the one that would have made a certain area representative win, but your very area representative may have been the one constituency or the one seat that would have made the 16th seat and therefore made the majority for one party or the other who would then form government. So you have to think about all these consequences of your vote or your abstinence from voting. You have to weigh all these possibilities and you have to accept that yes, your vote does matter, it does make a difference, and not only so in your community, which it absolutely does, but the effects of your one vote, of you practicing your democratic right, those effects span the nation.
Definitely, I agree with you. And I would go further and state that your vote has two weights. Weights, I mean, has two impacts. The first impact is for your area rep. And the second impact is for, if that seat comes in, then, and the party leader of that party gets 16 seats, then you have helped form government. I've heard a lot of people have concerns that they want more from their area rep, or they want more activities from their area rep, but they're quite satisfied with party leader. That kind of scenario. How does one then get to ensure a party leader wins without voting for his area rep? Is that possible?
It is possible by way of an omission or by way of voting. I personally will never be one to encourage any citizen over 18 who carries the eligibility and who bears the responsibility of voting to abstain from doing so. I believe your vote is your voice and you should definitely use a voice and cast your vote. But how that
But before sorry to interrupt, but just to clarify, if I'm in an area and I vote for this particular person, this area rep, then, and my area rep wins, that adds to the number of seats, 16. The party leader becomes government, right?
Yes.
It becomes prime minister and that party becomes government. But if I don't vote for an area rep, then I could like the party leader as much as I want, but if I don't vote for my area rep of the same party, then there's a possibility that if my area rep loses and they fail to form the 16, then no matter how much I like the party leader, he will not be the prime minister.
Yes, very much so. Many people would like to persuade not only themselves but others that not voting is inconsequential. And to me, that is a very, very
good point.
Very
excellent
dangerous concept to perpetuate. And I say that because the very scenario you just put proves that abstaining from voting could actually be very consequential, maybe even more so than voting. Because if you live in Orange Walk, both party leaders or all party leaders are from outside the Orange Walk district. However, you're registered to vote in the Orange Walk district, and you have a preference of one of the three party leaders vying for the post of Prime Minister this upcoming elections, and you have a favored one because of his vision, his commitment to development and action. There's one that you have singled out, but you're not registered in his division to vote for him directly, to give him your vote. What you can do to lend to his victory and to make sure his government, his party forms the next government and that he becomes the next prime minister, you would do that by way of voting in your constituency but for his party. So that's how your vote can lend to the person you have chosen or the person you favor to become prime minister, to eventually see that manifest itself after the election results have been published.
Because then it wouldn't matter then that one party leader wins by 1,000 votes, let's say, and the other party leader wins by 20 votes. But the party leader with the 20 votes managed to get the 16 seats, then he forms the government, he becomes the prime minister. And then no matter by how much the other party leader won, 1,000, 1,200, whatever, that does not ensure that he makes government. So we keep reiterating, we keep saying that the magic number is 16. And we try to emphasize the point to the young voters, to the young people, especially those that have an attitude that my vote will not make a difference. Yes, it will, and yes, this does. So we have broken down that your vote might be the vote that decides a seat, that decides the 16th seat, and ultimately decides government.
Yes.
So it's very important that we channel that information to our young voters and to anybody who has that attitude, my vote no, I make an impact, my vote no, I make a difference, I got a lot of work home, I got a lot of work at my job, I don't want to leave it because tomorrow when I come it's still on the day. You know, it's very important that we drill home that point, that message that your vote can make the difference. And there have been wars, there have been civil wars, people fighting for that right to vote. We have it in Belize. It is something that is protected under our constitution. It is something that we should use freely. We should accept elections because they are a democratic process in which we decide who we want to lead us into government. So please, the information and the message is that your vote counts, every single one, and the attitude that we do not want to participate. Now, we're not telling you to go there and hold flag and put up posters and be that. You don't have to be that type of voter. There are those type of voters. There are swing voters. There are voters who are very conservative. All we're saying is that take it upon yourself as a citizen of Belize to make the extra effort to go vote. It is your right, and you can determine your future. As we have explained, there is a scenario in which your one vote can determine government. So having made that clear, we're going to go to a commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about, continue talking about the voting process, and the voting, how we are governed, and powers of ministers after the dissolution of the House. So stay tuned, and we welcome you back.
How can I help you, sir?
Must get credit.
Is the credit that your problem? There you go.
Thanks for saving my life.
Never be stranded again. Digicel prepaid customers dial *77 followed by the pound sign and transfer credit. That's it. Save a life today with Digicel's Send Me Credit.
Already again.
Get more, do more, love more,
Live more with Digicel.
Take a ride with us. A glimpse into our future as a country. The road to building a stronger Belize. New hospitals, roads, and bridges are only the beginning. Sports facilities, stadiums, and institutes for higher education will all contribute to our dedication to improving lives for all Belizeans. Let's stay on the right path. The best is yet to come.
The best is yet to come.
Buster. They see you and know you're living. Always a star. Yes, you live in color to the limit. Large and in charge. Yes, that's why you rock with Buster. Refreshing range of colorful flavors. Always a star, never the audience. You run things never run you. Yes, you are the life of it, not just a part of it. Your life is never black and white. Live in full color. Buster.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Let's Talk About It. I'm your host, Ravey Gonzalez, with my co-host, Jaime Burns Jr. Tonight, we're talking about the impact of a vote, whether as a Belizean citizen, you can change government or you can make government. The answer is a definite yes. There is much weight to a vote, particularly in a circumstance where there is a tie of seats, 15-15, and you live in an area where that one particular area gives a party the 16th seat, then that party forms government. So the message has been that your vote counts, it has a lot of weight, and you determine which government is in place. The first part of our show was talking about the party that gets 16 seats becomes government, and then but we're moving on now to what happens when a party gets 16 seats. The party leader, obviously the one who seems to command the respect or have the respect of the 16, naturally, is the one that is appointed Prime Minister. Is that right, Jaime? And that is provided for on our Constitution. So perhaps we could deal with that.
Yes. Section 37 of our Constitution, 37.2 to be exact, states that whenever the Governor General has occasion to appoint a Prime Minister, he shall appoint a member of the House of Representatives who is the leader of the political party which commands the support of the majority of the members of that House. And this may rise bring the question about if the majority of a party is elected, but the party leader lost his constituency. Therefore, the party leader has not been elected to the House of Representatives, but his party has still attained the 16-seat majority. Can he or can he not be appointed Prime Minister still? And the answer is no. Which brings about the consequential question, who then will be appointed Prime Minister? And the Constitution also provides for that in Section 37.2, saying that if no political party has an overall majority, the Governor General shall appoint a member of that House who appears to him likely to command the support of the majority of the members of the House. So the Governor General, simply put, will appoint a member of the elected representatives to the House. he will appoint a member from those elected, and a member who commands the respect of the majority of the House. And furthermore, many people may question, okay, Prime Minister having been appointed, how then do the ministerial portfolios get delegated? Robert?
Yes, well, I know our Constitution provides that only 2/3 of your elected House of Representatives can actually be made cabinet members. You have your cabinet, you have your legislature, and you have your judiciary, 3 branches. But out of the elected members, only 2/3 of your elected members, rather, can be appointed members of cabinet. Now, cabinet is made up of persons who the Prime Minister or who the Governor General appoints on the recommendation of the Prime Minister. And it is a valid observation that the Prime Minister will try in his attempt to spread out representation, to put representation, not to repeat the word, but to put persons from the different sectors of Belize, different areas of Belize, the country of Belize, to make up his cabinet. And the appointment of persons who are area reps to ministers, the point has to be made very clear. You do not have to have a specialty in an area to become a minister of a specific portfolio. You don't need to be any type of genius in an area to become the minister for that particular ministry. That is not how it works. Government and the legislature is policy making, and those persons appointed to those ministers' position supposed to be supported by the technocrats, by the group of people that have knowledge in the particular ministry, people who have studied, people who have been there, and people who could give the minister sound advice, bona fide advice. And then the minister takes this advice and tables it into cabinet, and then cabinet decides how they will proceed with the policy, if it's a good one for the people, if it's a bad one, is there a better one? And that is how government or the executive collectively decides, theoretically. And so this whole notion that somebody has to be an expert in a particular field in order to be a minister is completely false. Now, before I stop there, I'm going to add, it helps if somehow you have a particular knowledge, but it doesn't come to the conclusion that somebody that does not have a particular specialty in an area would do a far worse job than somebody who has the knowledge and the education. Because when you vote for your area rep supposed to bring a lot of benefits to your area. It's not isolated, it's not particular to the ministry that he may get, which is ultimately upon the discretion of the Prime Minister. But having said that, if area reps circle themselves with the right people, the right technocrats that can assist him in providing timely information, accurate information, then that in itself, along with the decision of cabinet, goes to make proper policy for the government. Amen?
Yes, and also to simply provide a legal premise for the appointment of ministers. It is stated again in our very constitution, particularly section 40, subsection 2, that appointments to the office of minister shall be made by the Governor General, the head of state, who's acting in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister. So as you said, it's on the Prime Minister's advice first and foremost that they are appointed by the Governor General. And these appointments are made from among members of the House of Representatives, the elected House of Representatives, and from among the Senate. And I'd like to add to the points you made that although expertise in a certain field is not mandatory for an elected official, an elected representative to be delegated a certain ministerial portfolio. Expertise is very, very much appreciated. However, as you rightfully mentioned, expertise comes in many forms. It might not be by way of a formal education, but again, that expertise would be an asset. But expertise also comes in the form of the very technocrats who surround the minister, the elected representative. Expertise comes by way of published material from the ministries, and it is important to note that expertise in a particular field related to a particular ministerial portfolio comes in many shapes and forms. So all that must be taken into consideration, and all that is taken into consideration when the Prime Minister exercises his discretion as how to delegate the ministerial portfolios.
And so, another question that has been asked and that we will discuss right now is that upon the dissolution of the House, whenever elections are called, there needs to be the dissolution of the House. And when you have the dissolution of the House, a lot of people are asking then, what happens to government? Is government still functioning? Are the CEOs and are the ones in charge? The reason I ask the question, then what happens then if somebody gets a lease after the dissolution of the House and has the signature of the minister? The question is then, perhaps you could give me the legal foundation and then answer whether that lease is valid.
Certainly, Rave, but the fact that you mentioned the very CEOs is pertinent to the point I just made about ministerial expertise. The CEOs in all the respective ministries are the ones who are required to possess the educational merits to hold that office. Now, as far as the dissolution of the House, yes, many people are confused as to whether the dissolution of the House would render ministers and the prime ministers their powers invalid, if I may. No, it's important to understand that in our Constitution, particularly Section 84, subsection 6, and I will read directly. During the period between the dissolution of the National Assembly and the appointment of a Prime Minister after a general election, the government of Belize shall continue to be administered by the Prime Minister and the other ministers and ministers of state of the government. What does Section 84.6, which I just read, mean simply? What it means is that even after the House is dissolved, the Prime Minister, the ministers, and the ministers of state continue to act in those very capacities. So they are not stripped of their authority, of their ministerial authorities. They are not. They continue to function as such. So as far as the example you gave about a lease being issued and one having concern over whether the minister's signature on that lease is valid because the lease was issued after the House was dissolved, but before general elections, it is pertinent to note and to understand that that signature is indeed valid because the minister continues to act in the capacity of that portfolio.
You know, it is the information is important because certain quarters of the media, and people genuinely want to know, because there has been some speculation that those certain leases that have been issued are invalid because of that particular reason. So we want to make the point clear. Any minister who was a minister the day before the dissolution of the House retains his or her power. His or her signature remains with the same authority as it had before the dissolution of the House. And it's in that same capacity that the minister Hulse could swear in and for the new citizens of Belize, the nationality certificates of those individuals. In the same way that any minister could sign those documents, and they are valid documents, notwithstanding any fraud. They are valid documents. The signature, for all intents and purposes, is valid all the way until a new prime minister is appointed by the Governor General. So we had to make that clear so that our viewers could understand that government, in the form of the Prime Minister, ministers, and ministers of state, retain their power all the way until a new Prime Minister is appointed. And it is important that there is not any kind of misinformation going out there. And you are aware, my co-host has read from our Constitution.
Directly from it.
Directly
Yes.
from the Constitution, which is section what?
84, subsection
84,
6.
subsection 6. Our Constitution is the highest law of the land. And he has read it out, word for word, that says that the Prime Minister, the Minister, and the Ministers of State retain their power until a new Prime Minister is appointed right immediately after the general elections. So we're going to a break. Stay tuned as we come back and discuss some more interesting issues.
Francis Fonseca. He was the Attorney General who witnessed every secret document signed by then Prime Minister Said Musa. And he was also the old guard's choice to take over the PUP from Said Musa and his cousin Rao.
Special interest groups that control the party won again. The sad truth is that even when the party loses, the special interest groups still win. They don't suffer being in opposition, as our rank and file members do.
Former PUP senior deputies Marcus Pat and Cordell Hyde have officially been kicked off the PUP executive.
I am saying in a nutshell, they are hijacking the party.
I know that the rate they are going, the PUPs in a whole, they will lose the elections, they will lose the general elections. Because you can't be doing this to people and think that people will accept it.
Former Prime Minister Said Musa was charged with the theft of $20 million in Venezuelan grant funds. Ralph Fonseca, the former minister most closely associated with Musa during his 10 years in office, was also charged.
I find the secret diversion of those funds to be immoral, to be wrong. Really, it stinks, to speak frankly.
We can have a lot of dissent in our party.
I want to ask, where are those millionaires? Those people that paid millions of dollars over the 10 years when we were in government?
The elections are, I think, going to be very difficult for us to win. I don't believe in creating expectations that we cannot fulfill.
Son?
Yes, Dad?
I think it's time we have the talk. I believe you're old enough now, son. I know it's your first time. I know this talk might be uncomfortable. But you have to be smart, careful. You have to protect yourself. This can affect your future, son. It's not all about what you could get out of it. It's about making the right choice. Have you decided who you'll vote for?
Don't worry, Dad. You've raised me right. I will vote for the UDP.
Alright, that's my boy.
And welcome back to our final segment of Let's Talk About It. I am your host, Ravel Gonzalez, along with my co-host, Jaime Burns Jr. Tonight's topic was the impact of vote, a vote in a particular area that may change government. We have discussed the system that we have adopted, our Westminster system, and with the 31 electoral seats. The magic number is 16. Who gathers 16 first forms government, and that's under the consideration that one does attain 16 because now we have a third party.
We have a third party.
Historically, in recent years, no third party has won a seat, but that doesn't mean that the time has not come, and that could complicate matters where one party does not attain 16, closely, let's say, 14 seats. The main opposition, we call it the main opposition, as in the more popular party that has been in existence, attains, let's say, another 14 seats. And then the third party attains 3 seats. What happens in a scenario like that, Jaime?
In a scenario, that scenario would technically be akin to a scenario where the party leader of any party does not get elected to the House of Representatives, but the majority of his fellow party candidates do. And I say it would be akin to that situation because the Constitution, as it stands, stipulates that where there is no obvious majority, where there might be a hung house, meaning that it's equal, or in this case 14, 14 and 2, there is no clear majority, the Governor General, as the head of state in Belize, will then appoint a member from that 31 pool of elected representatives to be the head of government and therefore to be the Prime Minister. Now he would select on the rubric of a representative who commands the respect of the majority of the House of Representatives. So in the event that this election sees 14-14-2 split in the House of Representatives, then 14-14-3, sorry, then that would be the course of action that the Constitution mandates.
So the wise thing to would do is as well is to form a coalition government in which you broker a deal with the other 3,
yes,
and you can form that government as well. So that is one of the possible ways in which a third party may impact election. That is to be seen after the results are in next week, Wednesday. So again, it is important that we emphasize once more that your vote is important. Election is next week, Wednesday. I believe there's a lot of people who have made up their mind, a lot of people who have not made up their mind. We have heard the position of certain young people that they are quite satisfied with the party leader or a party leader. They are not satisfied with their area rep. Similarly, we have heard the other side of that argument, that they're satisfied with their area rep, but they're not satisfied with their party leader. We have made the effort to state that each vote has 2 impacts. The first impact is for your area rep, and the second impact is to put the party leader of the area rep, from the party of your area rep that you voted for, It's not area rep, actually been using the wrong word, it's a standard bearer. You become an area rep until after you win. So the standard bearer that you vote for is of the same party of the party leader. Then your vote has two impacts, because then you have assisted in ensuring that the party leader goes in as the prime minister to form government. We have discussed that it's very important that you go to vote. We encourage everybody, especially the young people, to let's not be cynical, let's not be negative. Look at your right to vote as a privilege, as a right that a lot of people do not have. You have been given this right by our Constitution, and you should protect it and use it wisely. As well, we've discussed about the powers of ministers after the dissolution of the House, and what those powers are and when those powers are extinguished. Our Constitution provides that the Prime Minister, the Minister, and the Minister of State retain their power, their authority, until a new Prime Minister is appointed immediately after elections. And so, having discussed that, Jaime, before we close off, what are your thoughts on the provision of the Constitution that says that there should be as equal as possible representation? I believe it's section 90.
I believe the provision you're referring to means that it refers directly to the division of the constituencies, because I listed them off earlier on the show, all 31. And in listing them off, I mentioned that Belize, for example, the Belize district has 13 constituencies, 13 seats. In comparison, Orange Walk has 4, Cayo has 6, Toledo has 2. So some might ask, why the discrepancy in the number of constituencies per district? The Constitution provides the answer for that question, and that answer being that the constituencies are so divided so that equal representation is most sensically ensured. What I mean is that they are divided by way of population, really. So if we have, they try as best to balance the amount of eligible voters in each constituency so that there is an overall balance of representation when those standard bearers are elected to Parliament, to the House of Representatives. So Belize will have more, and currently has more constituencies than all other districts, because Belize carries more of our population than any other district. Cayo is second for the same reason. Orange Walk, Corozal are tied for the same reason. It's because each constituency is supposed to represent at its best, make an effort to represent an equal amount of the national populace and the national electorate. Therefore, that is the premise for the division of constituencies across the country.
Absolutely. I believe, though, there are some areas, some divisions that only have 3,000 plus voters, while there is Belmopan, I believe, that has 9,000 plus. In Orange Walk, we have divisions that are 6,000 plus voters. I definitely believe that the time is soon for the commissioning of another exercise for the inclusion of more area reps. I believe that representation, once given, cannot be taken away. So I believe those areas in Belize City that have smaller divisions, number of voters, I mean, I don't agree with any joining of any two divisions to make up one number, because these people have been given the right to vote for a particular area over the years, and we should not take that away. However, we can create more divisions, especially in the bigger areas. I think that leads to more representation. It gives area reps a fairer chance to be able to conduct his work. I believe it is the football, not that the playing field is unfair when a standard bearer has to go visit 4,000 as opposed to 8,000. There's more, double the work for that one that has 8,000 voters. But the other side to that argument as well is that there will be expenses that the government will have to incur. Remember, for each seat that you create, there will be the added expenditures of making sure that there's a community vote, that there is the salary, there's all the benefits that come along with an extra seat. So
and the responsibilities.
And the responsibilities of those.
Most importantly.
That
yes.
of the new seat that you create. So it is, I think, a serious issue, one that has to be looked at in the near future. And of course, it only stands to benefit the people because you have more representation.
Yes. Also, though, of key note is that there are other variables which result in the discrepancy between the amount of voters from constituency to constituency. There is a constant mode of flux amongst the electorate from election to election. Many people who perhaps last election were working in Stancreek, now work in Orange Walk and vice versa, so they're transferred their votes. So variables such as those must be taken into account when considering why some constituencies why the eligible voters of some constituencies might outnumber the eligible voters of others. And I would also like at this moment, in concluding, so we here at Let's Talk About It would like to once again implore the importance of your vote. And I would like to use Newton's third law of motion as example. Each and every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And understand that inaction is also an action. It's an action in absence. So not voting also carries a consequence. Voting makes a difference. So understand that not voting does not mean that you will be inconsequential to these elections. You must vote. For example, we're here at Orange Walk. I keep telling people your vote is your voice. If Rave and I were to go to the taco stand and he doesn't wish to speak, so I order on his behalf, order $2-3 with pepper. I bring it back, Rave say, I never want no pepper. Well, Rave, you didn't speak. You didn't use your voice. How am I to know? How am I to bring you tacos without pepper if you never spoke, if you never said that to me? I won't know how to represent you properly to the tacos vendor if you don't tell me. Therefore, your area representative, your standard bearer won't be able to represent you in government, in the House of Representatives, if you don't speak. And the most effective way of doing so outside of actual conversation is by voting. So please make sure that a week from tomorrow you go and you vote. You need not wear party colors, you need not be a fanatic. The most that is asked of you is to dip your finger in some purple ink. That is the most that's asked of you. And all that is asked in return is for you to exercise your right, which many people before you have fought and dedicated their lives to. So honor their sacrifice, honor governance, honor your country beliefs, and vote on November 4th.
So what happens if I want tostadas instead of tacos, though?
Well, see, you're voting a completely different constituency.
Ladies and gentlemen, we were discussing how we are governed. We were discussing the importance of a vote. We were also discussing the powers of ministers after the dissolution of the House.
Which
remains until after election, until a new Prime Minister is appointed.
Very much so.
We also discussed the importance, again, reiterated the importance of the representation and the vote. As my co-host had said, you need to be represented if you are satisfied with infrastructure, if you know that there has been the good caretakers of the finances of the country, if you're satisfied about the manner in which the direction the country of Belize is going, you take those things into consideration. Remember that your vote has two impacts. Again, we repeat, your area, your standard bearer, and then it impacts the party leader. So it's very important that that message is communicated. We invite you to communicate that as well to your families, your friends, so that they understand the importance of their vote. And we emphasize that you come out early to vote on election day next week, the 4th of November. The election polls open at 7 o'clock. Come out early, and we ask, especially
and
with
Sorry, but they close at 6.
6. We have heard rumors of how there has been a lot of, or some incidents of violence. We ask our viewers, our voters to take care. We ask those that are in a position of leadership to tone it down.
Be diligent.
To be diligent, be careful, and take care of yourselves. So having said all of that, we'd like to thank Maurice Kokom, our director. Raheem Wagner is our video controls and graphics. Normando Esquiliano, our audio technician. So from us here at Let's Talk About It, we would like to thank you for tuning in and listening in. I am your host, Ravey Gonzalez, and your co-host, Jaime Burns Jr. We'd like to say good night and adieu.
Good night, Belize.